Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. Want to thank everybody who's joining us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or X, or on the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television. We thank you for watching live with us. And for everyone else who's either watching this or listening to this as a podcast, we thank you for joining as well. I'm joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, doing well. Good to see you. We're getting the spring weather now, and it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's nice to get a little warm. Uh, since the cold. I'm still not used to the cold in Atlanta. I really liked it in Tyler, Texas when I lived there as far as the temperature, because that was definitely a warmer environment place for some reason. It stayed warm in Tyler, but Atlanta, it's all right. This week I'm planning on going to New York, so I hope it's warm in New York this weekend. I'm going to go visit with the church in New York, and be the first time I've ever been to New York. So I'm excited about visiting the folks there and going there this week.
Yeah. Hey, if you get a chance to go into Manhattan, Jeff, you just got to experience that, because if you've never been there, it's a different feel. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe we will. We may not. I may just spend time with the church. But I found visiting places is good doing sightseeing and stuff. But sometimes it's better just meeting the people. The people is like you get more out of it. At least I do more out of meeting people from an area.
Yeah, for sure. So I hope you have a safe trip. I'm going to be going to Salt Lake City, and I'll be speaking to our group up there. So I haven't been up there in a number of months. So it'll be good to see those folks.
Very good. All right, we're going to go bring in our third host today, Olivia Doyle. How you doing, Olivia?
I'm doing good, guys. It's real nice to be back.
Hey, Olivia, how's the weather in Canada? Is it getting spring-like?
Oh, it is spring-like. No snow, and actually one day we hit 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It was awesome. Really good.
Thank you for telling us in Fahrenheit. Yeah, thanks for telling us in Fahrenheit, because you would have said Celsius, I wouldn't have known what you're talking about.
Yeah, I had to do the conversion. I don't know it either.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get into the topic if you want to.
Okay, let's do it.
Yes, let's go into the topic. So today's topic, and this is one that I found I was watching videos probably like 4 or 5 weeks ago on YouTube, and I can't if they come getting suggested videos, and I got videos suggested that were about giants and the Nephilim, and so I watched different videos from different people talking about Nephilim and giants, and kind of a lot of what I saw, I was like, well, I don't know if this is exactly what the Bible teaches, but it was interesting from that perspective. I don't know if y'all have ever done studies on Nephilim or giants or seen anything like that.
Yeah, I've looked into it, Jeff. We've had some people in the church who've had questions about it. It seems to pop up every few years now and again. You'll get this recurring question about Genesis 6. So I've done some research into it, and definitely did some research in the books of Enoch 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely a connection between those stories and what we're reading about, especially in Enoch, about the first book of Enoch.
Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts, Olivia?
Oh, this is definitely circled around lots of times. I don't know, maybe it's the mystery of it, right? And plus we've got, all these mythologies circulating too about giants and things like that. I think it'll make for a really interesting discussion. But the thing is, the Bible's not 100% clear. It doesn't come right out and tell you. So that's what makes it interesting. So yeah, we'll take a look at it, and see what it says.
Yeah. So if we look in different mythologies around the world, there are giants in these mythologies. So if you look at Greek mythology, you have what is known as the Titans. So the Titans were a race of these powerful beings that they came before the Olympian gods in their mythology. And one of the famous ones was Atlas. And so Atlas was condemned to hold up the skies. That's a pretty big guy, right? Or pretty big if you're holding up the sky. And there was Kronos, He was always been depicted as being this giant Kronos was the father of Zeus, and was the leader of the Titans. And also in Greek mythology, there was this thing called Gigantomachy, if I pronounce that correctly. It was a mythological battle between the Olympian gods and the giants, who were known as the Gigantes. And these giants were born from the blood of Uranus, who was known as the sky god. And after he was castrated by his son Kronos, so the giants were often depicted as these enormous, violent, destructive creatures in Greek mythology. We have Norse mythology. Also, there's the Jotnar or Jotun, are a race of beings that are described as giants. A couple of famous ones you may know of. One is Ymir or Loki. So Loki's one, kind of more mischievous. We've heard about Loki, but Loki in mythology is also portrayed because he was a frost giant. And so the frost giants lived in this land of like ice and cold, and and this was contrasting with the warm and hospitable land that the gods would live in for Norse mythology. Then we have Celtic mythology. So in Irish mythology, there was the Fomorians, or a race of giants that were depicted as monstrous, and they were hostile, and they were described as both giants and also as demons. And their stories involve battles with the gods of the Tuatha, the Danann. You're probably familiar with the Tuatha, the Danann. So the Fomorians are sometimes depicted with grotesque features, like having single eyes or large limbs or deformities. Also, Celtic traditions tell about the children of Dawn, who are giants that rule over the afterlife, and there was a giant king that ruled over them. Even in North America, I guess up in Canada, where you're at, Olivia, here in North America, there were giants of the Pacific Northwest. So in the folklore of various Native American tribes of the Pacific Northwest, they would talk about giants. I've actually even seen like History Channel shows and Discovery Channel shows talking about these giants of the Northwest, not Bigfoot, but actual like giant people. And they tell stories of these giant beings called the Tingit or something like that, who were able to like even shapeshift. So you have these legends of giants not only in the Pacific Northwest, but also in other parts of North America by Native Americans. And we're going to talk about the ones in the Bible and the Jewish legends about the Nephilim, and also Goliath we'll look at. But also in Hindu mythology, we have the Rakshasas, are large demon-like creatures that are antagonistic to gods and humans. And one of the big ones was Ravana, a demon king. And there was also Brahma's giants, and they're giants that were created by the gods in this mythology. We have in Chinese mythology, there's a giant king in the east. So in Chinese mythology, giants often appear in stories about battles between gods, humans, and supernatural beings. One famous giant was Pan Gu. He was a primordial giant who's said to have created the world by separating heaven and earth. Another is Kong Zi, who is described as a giant warrior who helped in early battles between the deities. Also, we have Japanese folklore. You have Oni, is a large, fearsome creatures, demons that were portrayed. The Polynesians, they had the Maori giants, from New Zealand. The Maori had stories about giants who lived in ancient times. And anybody who's seen Moana, have y'all seen Moana or familiar with the movie Moana? Maui, who was in that Disney movie portrayed, is a demigod who was portrayed as a giant in many of the tales. And also, there's in South America, they have the giants of the Andes that were it's kind of common, right, for people in the world to have these stories about giants. So why do y'all think that is so? Why do you think there's these stories about giants? It's kind of common.
I think it could be just like many stories that get put around the world, like the flood story can be found in many cultures. The idea of demonic forces or godlike forces is throughout many cultures. I think it's been corrupted by the influence of Satan and his demons in different ways, that some of these stories have gotten into other cultures, which leads some scholars to say, well, you see, the Christians didn't have this idea originally. It was before Christ that there was this idea of a savior figure. I think part of that is because of the corruption of Satan and his influence on the minds of men, that he's going to try to put things out there that would cause confusion. And I think this is one of them. That's my opinion, of course. But definitely an interesting subject when you start to delve into this.
Yeah. What do you think, Olivia?
Yeah, I think you hit it good there, Mike, when you said it's very similar to the creation stories. All nations having some form. So this is really interesting. I mean, we do have, we know that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, right? So all people have been living apart from God to some degree, right? So I think what we're seeing with a lot of these stories is man's imagination, when he doesn't understand what's going on around him, can come up with some pretty creative stories.
Yeah, and you know what to your point, once there's that story and other men then hear that story, it can be altered and changed and manipulated, and you get more of the same.
Yeah, stories do come. I think there may be some truth behind giants, because the Bible does say that there were giants in the Bible.
Sure.
And, we'll look at a famous one, Goliath, here in a little bit.
But let me just say, Jeff, that the size of Goliath versus what the giants were in the book of Enoch is very different.
Oh yeah. We'll look at that a little bit later. There's a difference in giants, and this picture I have right here is kind of in between of what a giant may have been in the Bible. I don't know if they were that big, but we definitely. We will look and see what the Bible has to say, and then we'll have to say, what do we know about giants and Nephilim, and how does it go? So let's go to maybe the main verse is here in Genesis 6 that the people use when talking about it, because this is where this is from the English Standard Version, because in the King James it says giants, but right here in the English Standard Version it says the Nephilim. So if you could, maybe Olivia, if you could read this scripture here in Genesis 6, and we can discuss.
Sure. When men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown."
Yeah, so I guess what most people go to in this is where it talks about the sons of God saw the daughters of men were attractive, and I guess they had children to them. And so this is the what it says right here is that the Nephilim were, I guess, from these comes from this. Is that the way you read it or look at it or see it?
I definitely feel that that's the way that some people can read it and see it. But what is Nephilim, and what's I think is important here, Jeff, is that phrase "sons of God."
Yeah,
because people seize upon that phrase, which in some scriptures it could refer to angels, but
we're
in other scriptures it can relate to men. And just like I say many times, Jeff, context really matters. We got to read what comes before this, what comes after it, and one other thing I want to say. Notice that throughout these first 4 verses, there's nothing here that says anything about angels. The context seems to be men. These were even the Nephilim. If you're saying the Nephilim
Yeah.
were from intercourse between angels and women, human
Yeah.
women, it still calls them men of
Yeah.
renown,
Mhm.
which if they were demigods, wouldn't you use a different term there?
Yeah, and we'll look into that. So if we look at another place where Nephilim is used, if you can read this in Numbers 13, because there's only 2 places in the Bible where that word Nephilim is actually used. And after you read this, Mike, we'll get into a definition of what the definition of Nephilim is. If you can read this for me.
Okay, so they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them."
Yeah. So again, if you just, I think this is maybe using some figurative language, because if they were like grasshoppers to them, how big would they be, right? Because grasshoppers are pretty tiny compared to humans.
Right.
So I think it's more or less they're probably exaggerating here. Would you think?
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely hyperbole in
Yeah.
scripture. There's no doubt we can prove that. So that's
Right.
one form of a literary device that's used in scripture. Again, people can argue with us about that. I saw a grasshopper yesterday, and I was not 300 feet above it, because
Yeah.
that's how some people think these giants were. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some wild theories out there about the giants, and so we'll look at that. So first, we'll look at what the word Nephilim means. So this comes from a Hebrew root word which means to fall, and so it's often interpreted as fallen ones, or those who cause others to fall. So, and again, we have it, there in Genesis, and we have it right there. We just read when they went to spy out the land. And that's all we got in the Bible. That's all we got is those 2 places, and we just have what the word means.
Yeah, one other point, Jeff, about the Nephilim in Numbers and the Nephilim in Genesis.
Yeah.
Again, this is a lot of detail that we probably won't get into, but the idea that the Nephilim were still around after the flood in the book of Enoch, part of the reason for the flood was to destroy those people. And then we see that this word is used after the flood. So again, what word do we have? Other information that there was sex again? We don't see that. So that's just another point for people to look at if they're researching this.
Yeah, because again, in the flood, we know that there was only 8 people who survived. There was Noah and his sons, his wife and their wives. That was it. I don't think any of them were giants. They wouldn't have fit on the ark. Right?
Good point.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, this word here could mean to fall. You definitely could see how people could use that and say, well, the angels fell too. So
Right.
I get the argument on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also those who cause others to fall. What do you think, Olivia?
Yeah, I think there's definitely alluding to some kind of a category of people that right now is a mystery, right? But they're definitely different. They're being recognized, but this is the only word they use for it. So interesting.
Yeah, and what we read in Numbers was that what was associated with them, which wasn't really what associated in Genesis, is their height, right? That they were large, that they were giant. So there's a connection. That's where the connection's made, that the Nephilim were also giants, and maybe Nephilim is another Hebrew word for giant or something. We don't really know. Because we don't.
And when you think of giants, you could all if these are men of renown, also, again, big personality or big importance. Is that possible in the Hebrew? I'm not a Hebraist. I couldn't tell you, but that's something to think about.
Well, you know what? If you look at a lot of corporations, a lot of the CEOs and people who make it are really tall people. That if you're a tall person working for a business, you're a tall person working for a business. For some reason, tall people move up higher in the corporate ladder because of their height.
Yeah,
People,
think of Saul, the King
Yeah.
Saul. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
that someone of great height is like people kind of look to that. And if you go back to like the days here, if you're taller than everybody else, bigger than everybody else, you can be king, right? Because you're not going to have too much opposition if you're the biggest and tallest.
Right, right. At least back then, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on here. So we have the theories on the identity of the Nephilim. So there's three major theories that are out there, and the one I've been watching the series House of David on Amazon, which I think it's a really good series about the House of David. Goes into a lot of history, but one of the things I think they kind of go to is when they're talking about the giants. They're talking about the Nephilim, and they mentioned they were the offspring of angels and men. They mentioned that in the TV series.
Oh,
That's
do
like,
they? Okay.
yeah, so that's kind of like an idea that's out there. Even in that movie Noah that came out years ago, they had that kind of idea as well. That was a really crazy movie.
Yeah, I remember that movie, Jeff, because I was trying to when I watched it eventually, not at the theater, but I was thinking, where are they coming up with this? But then I later studied the Book of Enoch, and I found out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that movie was more based on the Book of Enoch than on the Bible. Noah. So again, you have the angelic interpretation. I think that's the most popular, from what I can see, interpretations. And I saw people with like the Southern Baptist. They were describing it as the Nephilim as angels mating with humans. Some other, church organizations. I don't know what Catholics believe, but other church organizations were like espousing this view of the angelic interpretation. So that's the one we'll look at mostly. But there's other interpretations. The second is the human lineage interpretation, is that the Nephilim are descendants of the righteous line of Seth and the unrighteous line of Cain. So y'all have heard that probably as well.
Yeah, I definitely have read that. And if you look at chapter 5 of Genesis, you'll see where some of that thinking comes from.
Okay, well, maybe you can read that when we get to that, when we cover this one by itself. And then the third one is that these were just ancient kings or heroes or giants or powerful rulers from antiquity. So that's, there's nothing more than these were just, big people, and they were rulers or they were giants and stuff. So those are the three major ideas that are out there about them. So the question I have for y'all: do you think the Nephilim, are they the same? Nephilim and Giants, right? So Nephilim and Giants, are they the same, or do they represent different types of beings? Or what in other words was Goliath? Was he a Nephilim, or was he just a giant? Do we know, or what do y'all think?
I'm just thinking the scriptures. I'm trying to remember. Was he called a Nephilim or was he called a giant? I think he was called a giant.
Yeah, I don't even know if he was called a giant. His height was given, and you just kind of interpret. You just kind of like
right.
his height, that he was a giant because he was pretty tall.
Yeah. There seems to be a connection between the height, the Nephilim, and the giants. Mm-hmm. And there's some translation to some translators, like you just gave us, use the word Nephilim, and others use giants, and it's the same word, right? So yeah, I think there's a connection with all three.
Okay. Here's let's go ahead and read about. We're talking about Goliath. If I guess it's Mike's turn, if you could read here, it's 4-7 about Goliath, the most famous giant.
Okay, there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield bearer went before him.
So he's a big dude, I guess, that's described from this, and also just the weight, right? The weight of his armor and the size of his spear are being described as normal than a normal person would want to carry around or use. And if we look at what 6 cubits in a span is, so we can see what's the height. This is what people have theorized, and maybe there's probably different variations of what a cubit is. So a cubit is typically considered to be about 18 inches, though it could vary slightly depending on something in the culture. Some cases it could be as much as 21 inches, right? So 18 inches to 21 inches. I think it's probably like supposed to be like maybe the length from your elbow to your top of your fingers or something is how they would measure. This is a cubit, but that would vary from different people as well. But so cubit, maybe we'll say 18 inches, and a span is the distance between the tip of the thumb and the tip of the little finger when the hand is fully extended, right? So that's a span, is when your hand's extended right there. So that they say that's about 9 inches there. So calculating, you have 6 cubits in a span. 6 cubits times 18 inches is 108 inches, plus the span of 9 inches. You get 108 inches plus 9 inches, 117 inches, which is 9 feet 9 inches. So it's pretty tall. And I guess there are people who critics of the Bible would say there's no way that could be so. Have you ever heard of that, where people say there's no way that Goliath could have been that tall? There's no humans that big.
Yeah, I've heard that, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Yeah.
No, of course we understand the Bible. We don't agree with that, right? But there's people who are like saying this. We're just believing in mythology because we're talking about giants and stuff. But if we look back into recent history, there's a guy named Robert Wadlow.
Yeah.
If you've heard Robert Wadlow, if you've ever been to a Guinness museum, Guinness Book of World Records museum, they usually have a statue of Robert Wadlow in their lobby of this guy. He lived to be 22 years old, and I think he was still growing up until he died. But he had complications from this, and he was 8 feet 11 inches tall. I mean, that's huge,
Wow.
right?
That is.
And that's not very far. That's only 10 inches away from Goliath. And, if Robert Wadlow lived to be 25, 26, 27, he could have been up there in the 9 foot range. We really don't know. But he was a big man that we know about.
Right.
So that's telling me, right, that humans can be that tall. You can have someone who's as tall as Goliath. And because we have examples in our recent history.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's within the realm of possibility for sure.
Yeah. And then you have Andre the Giant. If you remember Andre the Giant, he was called the Giant, and he was only 7'4" So I say only 7'4". I was at the gym this morning, and a guy walked past me who was like, I think he might have been 7 foot, and he was like big, muscular guy. And I was thinking, man, I'm talking about giants later, and here's a giant walking right past me. Because to most people, someone who's 7 foot tall, and if they're kind of muscular or big, they're like a giant. Would you not say?
Yeah, I definitely would say that for sure. You think of Shaquille O'Neal? There's a basketball player right now in Canada, I believe, who's 7'9". So there definitely are some tall people in the world. And if we think over the history of humanity and different things that could have been going on with the environment and ourselves, the possibility is there that there could have been increased size at one time.
Yeah, because if you think of like dogs, like we mate dogs to get different sizes of dogs, like everything from like a little tiny little Chihuahua to like a Great Dane, these big like horse-like dogs that are out there. Like there's a big variation in dogs, and we did that by variation, And so when God created humans, He created us with those variables in there, right? The ability to adapt to our environments. Some would be larger, some would be small. And have you ever met a family of big people?
Yeah.
Like they're all like tall, big people. You would say these are like a giant family in a sense, right?
Right. Exactly.
So it's not within the realm of possibility that there were families of large people.
Right.
and peoples that were giants. Maybe not as tall as Wadlow or Goliath, but they were tall.
Right. But these folks here that are being described, they've got that giantism, right?
Yeah. So
a lot of these have health problems. They're not healthy. They're not necessarily strong, although Andre the Giant was, but overall in general, they're not strong. Whereas we've got Goliath and these giants here, these guys have strength and they're able to throw their weight around really well. You know what I found interesting is the Septuagint's got a different size for Goliath. The Septuagint in that same passage says he was 4 cubits in a span.
Okay.
So there's some variation right in there, even in the size.
So 4 cubits in a span, that's more in the range of like Andre the Giant rather than
over 6.5 feet. But then aren't they describing someone when they're looking at him? Is this a person who's got like shoes with spikes on them and they got a helmet that's got, like 12 inches of something on top? Right?
Yeah.
So is it the overall height when they're dressed? I don't know. Interesting thought.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not like we believe the story's true, that there was a Goliath. David was able to defeat him with one stone into the forehead. And this happened. And again, so the idea of giants, like the guy I saw at the gym, he was in regular height, but like if I was like, say maybe there's people who say that maybe the Hebrews, they weren't as tall, very tall back then. They could have been like 5'4", 5'3", right? Like Saul may have been tall if he was 6 foot or something, or something. So they may have been shorter on the shorter end, and they come into this land of people who are on the taller end, right? People who are 6 feet and higher. You would say these are giants, right? These people, because these are big people. Because you wouldn't I wouldn't want to mess with anybody. these big people, right? Then I'm sure they were thinking the same thing when they say they were like grasshoppers compared to these big guys.
Yeah, you know what else was really interesting, the passage you picked out there, Jeff, is that this guy also had an armor bearer who carried this huge armor of his. So this guy had strength too and size, just not quite as big as Goliath, but he could do it too.
Yep. All right. So again, here's just the definition of gigantism. We won't go into all that, but basically, like you were saying, it's kind of a defect now for someone who gets that high. That because Robert Wadlow, nobody was going to fight him because he was walking around with like a cane. He really was. His bones were not. They were growing too big. So there's that gigantism that happens now, where people who get that high have that. But again, I've seen people who are probably in the 7 foot range who are just about just normal proportions, right? And there's some pretty strong people then. And so my idea is when the Bible talks about giants, I'm thinking maybe 7 foot or even the 6 foot range.
Yeah.
These are like large people compared to me. And there's some cultures where people are just smaller, right? When I was in the Philippines, I was walking through the city street of the Philippines, and I kind of noticed like I'm the tallest person walking through here.
I had that experience in the Philippines also. It was different because I was like, man, I'm taller than most people here. It was a weird feeling.
Yeah, I'm not a big person, but just imagine like a 6'5", 6 foot, 10 person walking through. People in that kind of in a culture of a smaller people, they're giants, right? So that's where I think that's me. I believe that's where the majority of giants are in the range that we know as real. And maybe again, like you said in the Septuagint, maybe there's a translation that happened that went from 4 to 6 somewhere that we don't know about, But again, four cubits in a span still pretty large to me.
Yep.
All right. Now we also read about in Deuteronomy 2:10-11. So I think it's your turn, Olivia.
Okay. The Emim had dwelt there in times past, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. They were also regarded as giants, like the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Emim.
So here's just another. Again, there's if we're really looking into it, if you do a search, there's very few accounts about giants. We have Goliath. We have here, there's mention of Goliaths, but this is one. the Anakim is talked about, and they were giants like the Anakim. So is this maybe a race of people who are just known as being taller, right? Than people. We have the race of pygmies, right? That are small.
Mhm.
So what prevents in the range of growth? There's this large people out there.
Right. Definitely a possibility.
Yeah, aren't there a lot of tribes in Africa that are very, very tall?
Yes.
Yeah, there are some tribes that are taller, average height taller. I wouldn't say 7-footers, but definitely a tall people, Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So the word giant there is a different word that we read because we had the word Nephilim, but there's most of the words that translated giant that we hear is from the word Rapha, which means giant, or Rephaim. This is the word, just for just a large person. And again, it's not, because when I grew up, I guess you heard the story of Jack and the Beanstalk,
Yeah.
right? And the Jack and the Beanstalk, when Jack goes up that giant's like a huge giant. Usually, like he's probably the ones that's like 100 feet tall or something.
The Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah. or the Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah.
All right. So first, let's look at the angelic interpretation. Let's look at what people have in support of the angelic interpretation, where they say the offspring of fallen angels who mated with human women. All right. So one of the things they say, and I'll read these real quick. We're going to go through them. Is that when you look in the Bible, when it talks about the sons of God, right? Because it says Genesis 6:2, the sons of God, so the daughter of men were attractive, and they took to them as wives, and they chose. If you go elsewhere, in the Old Testament, like in Job 1:6, it says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came among them." So we're saying right here in Job, the sons of God is referring to angels. Yeah, and Job is an old book probably older or as old as Genesis, right? So this is this was a term used in Job 38. Talking about where we laid the foundations of the earth. In verse 7, it says, "When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." So these are saying, "Hey, look, that right here we have in this book, sons of God is talking about angels."
Mm-hmm.
In Daniel 3, we have where the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? They were thrown into the fiery furnace. And in 3:25, it says, "Look," he answered, "I see 4 men loose." So instead of seeing the 3 guys who are thrown there, we see 4 walk into the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. So they would say, well, he's like a son of God, like an angel, or we may think this may be a Christ or something, but
Right.
there's those who say this could have been just a description of an angel as a son of God. So if who read last?
I did.
So Mike, if you could read in Luke, we're going to read what Jesus has to say. And this is probably because first, what do you think about that? The idea of sons of God being angels.
So I get that argument, Jeff, but I could cite you scriptures that say that men are sons of God, and the obvious example of that is in Hebrews, where it said, he didn't say that the angels were going to be part of his family. He said that humanity could become part of his family, but there are other scriptures that use that phrase or son of God in reference to man. So I get the argument, but I can show you other scriptures that use that phrase for humans.
Yeah, and if we look at the writer of Job was not the same as writer as Genesis, and so just because he was saying sons of God was angels doesn't mean the writer of Genesis, which we believe to be Moses, probably wrote it based on other literature that he kind of compiled literature and took some stories and put them together. But when he put it together, he might have been thinking the same thing that Job was thinking, right? Because this is a different writer of a different book written like hundreds or 1,000 years apart or whatever when these books were written.
Yeah, great,
All right.
great point. That is another good point. And Olivia might know this. She's been studying the Septuagint. It uses a different phrase there for sons of God than what most of the translations use.
Do you know that right offhand, Olivia?
Offhand, no. No, I don't.
Okay, in the book of Job, yeah, rather than sons of God for the
Yeah.
angels.
Let me look it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, while you're looking that up, could you read this? So we're going to look at now the counter argument. We're going to look at some scriptures that kind of counter argument the ideas that angels could mate with humans. And we're going to first read in Luke, starting verse 27 of 20. If you could read that, Mike.
Then came to him certain of the Sadducees, which deny that there is any resurrection, and they asked him, saying, Master, Moses wrote unto us, if any man's brother die having a wife, and he die without children, that his brother should take his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. There were therefore 7 brethren, and the first took a wife and died without children, and the second took her to wife, and he died childless. And the third took her, and in like manner the 7 also, and they left no children and died. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife of them is she? For 7 had her to wife. And Jesus answering said unto them, the children of this world marry and are given in marriage, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world and the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are any given in marriage, neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection.
So this is kind of, your point you just made about other places talking about humans being sons of God, right? So it says that we are children of God, because again, angels are children of God because God created them. We're children of God because God created us. So there's we're in that same sense. We're all children of God, but right here, and I think we're in Matthew, it kind of gets a little more clear on this about marriage. And I'll read this real quick in Matthew 22. This is the same account, but it's a little bit different here in Matthew. It said, Jesus answered and said to them, you're mistaken, not knowing the scripture nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels of God in heaven. So and that makes sense, right? Because that story of whose wife would they be, right? And again, I've known people who've lost a mate, and they find a new wife, right? And they get married to someone else, and maybe that happened a couple of times, and somebody may have married 3 people, right? Their whole life, well, what's going to happen in the resurrection? Whose wife will they be? Whose husband will they be? And Christ saying, well, they're going to be like angels. Angels don't marry. We're going to be like that. We're not going to marry. We're going to be beyond that in our resurrected state. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, let me take an opposing view just for the sake of an interesting argument here, just to look at this differently. Some of the things it was saying is those that are in the resurrection, they say that are counted worthy to be in this new world. So this is something different than what's the earthly realm, right?
Right.
And so speaking of not marrying because they're like the angels of God, are they saying we don't marry because angels don't marry? Or is it saying we don't marry because we're spirit beings like angels that are in heaven, right? So that's because we've got bad angels, the demons, right? And they're here around on earth, right? So we've got a difference, just even in them. So it's I don't know. I don't know. That's what I mean. It's a mystery, but
yeah, the argument I heard about this scripture by people who believe that the sons of God back in Genesis were angels. They say, well, the angels in heaven, well, they don't marry, but the angels who came down to earth did, because those are different angels. They weren't obeying God, so they weren't marrying.
Yeah, I've heard that argument, Jeff, and again, I can't completely disprove them. I get their logic there, but here's something that I bring up in this conversation. If you're saying that the angels had sex with humans, isn't that interesting? Because what does Satan try to do? Everything that God is doing, Satan tries to corrupt. Whether we think about the holy day of the Sabbath, whether we think about God's holy days versus human holidays, all these different ideas. So let's think about this story. That why would Satan want to corrupt this story and say that the angelic realm could cohabitate with women and produce offspring of some sort? Why if that's false, why might Satan want to use that story and corrupt what God is really doing? Because God is doing that with humanity. God is trying to create a race that's going to be like him, that's going to be similar to him. Mm-hmm. So Satan is trying to corrupt that story by saying, hey, I can do this too. And we see stories like this throughout human history. In the Middle Ages, we had stories of what were called the incubus and the succubus, where demons would cohabitate with women, and that was a thing that was believed in the Middle Ages. What do we have today? Aliens are coming from outer space. They are having intercourse with women and creating a race of beings. That's in New Age religion. That's permeating amongst some people in our world today. These thoughts that, again, what did the Greeks have? That the gods could cohabitate with man. Again, pagan religion. Who might be the progenitor of that? I submit my opinion that Satan is permeating the world with these types of stories to get people to believe in all this stuff that isn't the real truth of what God is trying to do, trying to obfuscate what God is really trying to do.
I think you may be rolling to something there, Mike, because theologically, like, okay, say this is true. The angels and a human have this offspring, so that's a different type of creature, right? Not quite a human, not quite an angel. So, do they have a chance for salvation? Right. Like, or they condemned because they had fallen angels who were their parents, and there's no, like, the Christ died for the Nephilim. Well, I would say that he did die for the Nephilim, because I don't believe the Nephilim were these hybrid creatures, right? So there's a theological problems I think you get when you start.
No doubt. That would be the next thing to bring up in this discussion is, okay, if that did happen and you got this race of half angel, half man, that's kind of, the Bible doesn't say anything about that anywhere else. We're picking stuff out of the Bible and speculating about it, and you got to be very careful when you do that.
Yeah. Well, another thought too that people have put out is that, well, maybe the genome pool was being corrupted. Because, it says the seed of the woman is going to be the Messiah. Well, we've got the seed of the devil, right? The seed of the serpent.
Yeah. And listen, Olivia, you're right on with that. There are some outlandish groups out there, some sects that push this idea and talk about a pre-human race. They talk about certain people today who were from this particular coming together of the angels and human women that created some people today. And I'm not going to get into that because we don't believe that. But there are white supremacists who definitely pick on this story and say that certain people in the world today are of this race of Satan and demons cohabitating with women, which can lead you down a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's wild. These wild theories also kind of like make Christians look bad in a way. Like I believe in the truth. I believe in reality and things that are real and what God teaches. And this is fantasy. This is fantasy, and these are like things that people we can write books about and stuff. But there's nothing in the Bible that talks about that we just have that one verse, and you have to be careful. When you want like you want clear verses. When something's not clear, it's better to read verses that are clear to form doctrine rather than unclear verses.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, Jeff. And just to address Blake Silverstein, he put a couple scriptures there. He mentioned Michael Heisner's book, The Unseen Realm, which is very popular. It sold a lot of copies. A lot of Christians have read it. And there's some good material in Heisner's book, but I don't agree with everything in Heisner's book. He seems to be into this idea to some degree. I'm not going to speak for him because he's passed away.
Yeah.
But the scriptures that Blake is using to suggest that 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude 6 are suggesting that the angels cohabitated with women. That was a sin.
Are you able to read those scriptures?
Those scriptures don't say that.
Yeah.
People pull from those scriptures and put them together with the other scriptures. Again, you could go down that road in looking at those two scriptures, but there are other ways of looking at those scriptures, and they don't say what Heisner was implying they were saying. They can be looked at in a couple different ways.
Hey, Mike, are you able to pull those scriptures up and read them real quick?
Yeah, so let me go to 2 Peter 2:4. Yeah, let's read it. Let's actually read it.
Read it and see what it says.
And again, here's the question for Olivia and Jeff. When I read this, you tell me, is it saying that angels had sex with women? I say it's not saying that at all. So 2 Peter 2:4, let me read it to you. Here's what it says. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person. Let me give you more context. A preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly, and deliver just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. So where they go, folks, is they say, oh, look, it mentions Sodom and Gomorrah here. Well, it mentions Noah. It mentions Sodom and Gomorrah. It mentions Lot. It's talking about different things that occurred that caused God to bring judgment, okay?
Right.
Just like I believe the original sin of the angels, God brought judgment on the angels and put them away. They didn't have what they could have had, and he's just using different examples. What do you guys think? I mean, does it say here that the angels had sex with women?
Doesn't say that at all, does it?
No.
Right. But again, they imply they get this implication because, Sodom and Gomorrah, they had sexual relations in a way they shouldn't have.
Right.
So the angels had sexual relations in a way they shouldn't have. But it doesn't say that.
Right.
Right. We don't even know if angels have genitalia.
Right. And so let me go to Jude.
Yeah.
One chapter here. Let's pick it up in verse 6 of Jude. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Yeah. So again, they're implying that because here's their argument, because Sodom and Gomorrah are mentioned here and they went after strange flesh and they had fornication, they're saying that, that the angels must have done that also. But it doesn't say that. It's talking about what happened with the angels, okay, that they left their first habitation. Now, the people who believe the book of Enoch believe they came down from heaven and mated with women. That's leaving their first habitation. But another possibility is Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 Satan left his habitation of having control over the environs of the earth and said, I want to be like the Most High. And he got a third of the angels to do that. And Revelation 12:4 says they were kicked out of heaven. That's when they left their first habitation.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about that there. So you're right. Let's move on here because we're getting close to time ending. I already talked about that argument right there. And also, we don't need to read it in 1 Corinthians 15, but 1 Corinthians 15 talks about different kinds of bodies, and we talked about bodies like a few weeks ago. So we don't get into bodies. But verse 44 says that so in a natural body, it's ranged as a spiritual body. There's a natural body and there's a spiritual body. So the Bible says there's different kinds of bodies, right? That when we will be resurrected, we'll be a spiritual body. And again, we have to say that angels right now, they have a spiritual body, whatever that is. And so there's no way, just like scientifically, genetically, that could even work, right? There's no way that could work if you just look at it from that perspective.
So to play devil's advocate, Jeff, because I've had this conversation before with someone. So one argument I received from someone was, well, what about the angels eating lunch with Abraham in the Old Testament? And okay, you can put that down on your side for your debate. Yeah. But here's the point I want to make. Okay, the angels ate some food, but where in the Bible do you have angels having sex anywhere that it's clear? Okay, I get that they could eat food, but nowhere do I see any angels having sex with a woman in Scripture where it flat out says that.
It doesn't say it. All right, let's move on here. Again, we don't need to go into too much detail, but there's Nephilim and Giants in the Book of Enoch. So the Book of Enoch was written in the 1st century before Christ, and Genesis was probably written about 1,300 years before that. Best guess, right? So the person who wrote the Book of Enoch had this idea. Like, they read the book of Genesis and they had in their mind that this sons of God was angels, and they had this idea. So they wrote a whole book with all kinds of crazy things based on this idea. And you've done some stuff about it, Mike.
So here's a theory. Again, this is opinion, this is speculation, but a theory is, okay, if that's written about 100 years before Christ, what's going on in the Roman world at this time? Well, this is the age of Hellenism. Greek thinking is now popular. It is permeating the Roman world. And these ideas of gods cohabitating with women is from the 800s, 700s BC. Those are the stories that the Greeks first created about these gods like Zeus and all the others who had sex with women. So now Hellenism is the thing going on in the Roman world. All these Greek thoughts are permeating. And so some of these Jews heard these stories. Enoch was a mysterious figure. Somebody, I believe, my opinion, created that book of Enoch, used some ideas that were around at that time. Like, what happened? What are these sons of God and daughters of men? And, and they put it together with Greek mythology. And I believe that's what the book of Enoch was doing.
Yeah. And again, they said the giants in it were up to 3,000 feet tall or 4,000 feet.
300 or 400 feet from what you see in different translations of Enoch.
So they were definitely, it was the book of Enoch is a false Bible. It's a counterfeit Bible book. And who's the author of counterfeits?
Yeah. And here's the thing. People will say, oh, well, there's some things in there that are in the Bible. Yeah. That's how you get people. You put some truth in there,
Like the Book of Mormon. Like the Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon has a few things in the Bible.
The Book of Mormon actually quotes whole chapters of the Bible too.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. So the second theory is the human lineage interpretation that the Nephilim as descendants of the righteous line of Seth and the unrighteous line of Cain. So Olivia or Mike, you'll have any ideas why this could be a good reason to believe that's what's going on.
I think it's easy to believe this because it's a lot harder to believe in angels having sex with humans.
Yeah.
But I don't know either, because then we have to come up with an answer of, okay, so the last noble person prior to Noah was, I think, Methuselah, right? Methuselah. Everybody else died in that lineage. But what about all the rest of the people that were also sons and daughters of Seth, but they died in the flood? So we kind of like, well, why didn't they live if that was the righteous one? So, like I said, it's not very clear on what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt that you'll see some argumentation that casts some doubt on this theory. But again, the Bible wasn't written for us to answer all of our questions.
Yeah.
The Bible was written the way God wanted to write it. And is it possible that some of that confusion is going to be there to see how we are going to react to it and how we are we going to go down that rabbit hole, or are we going to say, hey, you can't answer that question. Just leave that alone.
Yeah.
All right, and the third theory is this: the ancient kings are heroes. That's all that is describing ancient kings are heroes. Giants are powerful rulers from antiquity. And if we go back to Genesis 6:4, and I have it highlighted here, where it says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came to the daughters of man, they bore children to them. It says these were the mighty men. It says they were men, right? It says the Nephilim were mighty men who were of old. They were men of renown. So to me, that kind of blows the whole argument. It says that they were men. That's what it says.
Yeah. Again, I'm with you, Jeff. But what they will counter with is, they looked like men, or they were in the appearance of men, because angels can appear as men. So it's using that word in that way. So again, I don't agree with that argument. But that's kind of some of the reasoning that they'll push.
Yeah.
This men of renown, it almost looks like it's alluding to ancestor worship. I wonder.
Yeah, and so that, I think, when you look at some of the false religion in the world today, Livia, and this is maybe be something we should do some more research on, you will find that a lot of it is ancestor worship. When you go to the Far East, on places like Thailand and China, Japan, the previous ancestors and what they were all about, to some of those people, they become like spirits to them, and they pray to them, and they, in a sense, worship the ancestors, you could say. Who knows what is happening here in Genesis 6, but to put a lot of emphasis on your ancestors can lead you down the wrong path. It can become an idol,
Yeah, and the thing is, we just don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know all the details because it's not something we need to know. It's not really part of the main story. It's just like in a little aside of talking about these things, and people take this small little verse, right, and they want to build whole mythologies about it and whole systems of belief from this one little verse. And I just think that's not what it was meant to be.
Yeah. I just wonder when God gave all this information to Moses, I mean, this is way after, creation, and if they're coming out of Egypt, was he actually giving Moses the correct information as opposed to the false information that was circulating all around? Because it's like God saying, let me set the record straight. What you've been hearing in Egypt is wrong. What you've heard in the land of Canaan is wrong. Here's the way it was.
I follow you to a point on that. Olivia, help me a little bit more. So the Egyptians are false information. Okay, so God's gonna.
Yeah, in the way they believe in creation, how it happened. They believe their pharaohs were descendants of the gods, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
They're religious ideas. Let's put it that way.
I got you. Very good.
Yeah.
No, good point. I like it.
All right. So as we're concluding here, this is, I'm not going to read this right here, but this is one of a lot of fake news stories that goes around on Facebook and Instagram and different people sharing, saying that the Supreme Court forced the Smithsonian to release classified papers about giants that were found in North America and stuff like that. These aren't real, right? They're not. There's not any archaeological finding a lot of giants or any giants out there. It's just not there. There's also like fake pictures like this that are going around. This is something I made with AI, just real quick. And there's people will share this and say, look, they found like giant bones, or here's another old picture where this guy's digging up this giant bone in the side of a mountain. So
yeah, that's what's scary, Jeff, is what AI can do now. I mean, we had enough trouble before with stuff. Now, when you can create pictures of people that are real and give them their voice and run it on the internet, and you can hear the person talking to you, that's what they look like. People are going to believe this stuff. And it's a scary world we're going into, man.
Yeah, so there's a lot of misinformation out there about giants. But the only height for a giant in the Bible we get is Goliath. That's the only one we get. No one else we get is Goliath. We do get a little bit about Og, the king of Bashan. It says in the scripture that he had an iron bed, and it was 9 cubits in length and 4 cubits width, which was about 13 feet by 6 feet. So he had a big bed. Doesn't mean he's a big person, but it says this guy had a big bed, right?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Because that bed could actually be referring to his burial site, and they've got this nice iron, a gate all around it. And so they're talking about the entire dimensions of his burial site. Maybe, I don't know. I find it interesting that.
Why do you say that, Olivia? Why do you say the bed? What did you learn about that?
I came across a photo, and it had to do with one of the old Western gunslingers or whatever. And when he was buried, they actually did put an iron fence around it, and that was stating him. I'm not saying that's how, Og was buried. I'm just saying whatever it was they laid him into, maybe it's his casket that they would call his bed. It just seems like he's a grand guy. We'll give him a grand bed to lie in permanently or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just sometimes we read the wrong things into it because we have a certain bias and we want to prove, hey, here in the Bible it says he was 13 feet big.
Not. Yeah. So again, the Bible doesn't, like, other than Goliath, it doesn't give heights to people. Right. So we don't. So again, like the guy I saw at the gym this morning, to me, he was a giant. This is big, muscular guy. He's 6 foot something, or maybe 7 foot. It's like to me, he's a giant. I think to the Israelites, they're giants. These people, they were probably big, strong people. Big, strong families, and those were the ones who were the leaders, because they're the ones who were able to bully others to follow them. I would say.
Yeah, and the details of this story, Jeff, are not in the Bible. They're in an extra biblical book. Yeah. And in that book, those giants were 300 to 400 feet high. Yeah. Again, if those people lived, their bones would have been found. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or there'd be footprints, like in a riverbed or somewhere. You'd have some. Like, where would they sit? Where would they eat? Where would they live? I don't I mean, Israel's not a really big area. Like, where they go? I mean, where would they live? Like,
they live on the top of mountains. They built a castle on the mountain. There's no room for them down below.
Jack and the Beanstalk. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I don't have anything else. Y'all have anything else you want to mention before we go?
That's all I got, Jeff.
Yeah. I just want to say, though, that what is written in the Bible, even though we don't understand it, it's really important because God put it in there, right?
Right.
And it's for our understanding. So this is something important. We're just working at trying to figure out what it is, right? But
Yeah.
Yeah, good point, Olivia. I do agree with that statement. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pointed to, though, that the story we're reading in is about the earth being corrupt and God's judgment on the earth. And this was part of it, the corruption. And again, there's probably stuff going on before the flood we just don't know happened because it was before the flood. I think the whole point of God washing it all away is so we wouldn't know what was going on beforehand, right?
it was bad.
It was corrupt.
And what we can know from Genesis 6 and Jude and 2 Peter is that we need to follow God. We need to stick with God. That's the thing we can know for sure in those scriptures.
Yeah. So again, hey, thank you for joining me with this conversation. I just wanted to talk about the Giants and Nephilim, just to see what we could discuss. Look at the theories that are out there, and kind of like what we as I think as like, because we're kind of like solid in the Bible. We're not to these weird theories. We're kind of like, we try to stay solid what the Bible has, and I think we're hopefully we can keep that when we look at some of these interesting ideas that are out there. All right. Again, I want to thank everybody who's joined us today, who's watching, and thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Mike, and we'll see everybody again next week for another edition of Prove All Things.